Hello, welcome back to today's first video. We're going to have a look at what's happening in the tropical Atlantic for today's first video. Of course, all eyes on Hurricane Irma, which is now up to Category 4. It may well strengthen to Category 5 over the coming few days. And it's going to impact the Caribbean initially, starting in the next few hours. And then going through to the end of the week in the Caribbean. Then up the weekend, it may curve northwards and impact Florida, giving them a real pasting potentially. So I'll talk you through everything that's going on with Hurricane Irma and more generally in the tropics in a second. Today's second video will be coming up this afternoon, and that's going to be your usual look at the UK and European weather scene for the next week to 10 days. We'll also include the CFSV2 in that for the next month. Thought we'd better split these videos up into two and just focus on the tropical situation first of all. So I thought I'd just start with the sea surface temperature anomalies in the tropics at the moment, just to explain some of the reasons why we're having such an active hurricane season this year. So just so you can get your bearings, this is the equator just here. See if I can draw a straight line. So that's the equator going through there. The northern hemisphere is just to the north of the equator, of course. Southern hemisphere is down to the south. We've got the Pacific Ocean over here. We've got the Atlantic Ocean over here. This is, of course, America up here. That's Spain over there. This is Africa. And, of course, this is Mexico here. South America just here. And the Caribbean just there. So that's your geography lesson for today. So the area that we're interested in is this area of above average sea surface temperature anomalies just here through the tropical Atlantic Ocean, and particularly off the coast of Africa, sort of this area here. Now, remember, this is a very warm part of the oceans anyway, so these are anomalies to average. If we have a look at the scale, we can see that the anomaly to average is somewhere around 3, possibly up to 4 degrees above average here in this part of the tropical Atlantic Ocean. And this is where we get the storms forming that eventually produce the tropical storms and hurricanes. Initially, I just start off as showers and thunderstorms. Areas of showers and thunderstorms, they sort of develop further into troughs of low pressure, and then as they continue to pick up moisture and energy from the tropical Atlantic Ocean, those troughs of low pressure form into storms, tropical storms, and eventually hurricanes. So it's very much a progression that you go through. The initial phase, the initial genesis of these storms is always in the form of just showers and thunderstorms. It's always, or very often, in this area just here. Now, because we've got these high sea surface temperature anomalies in this part of the tropical Atlantic Ocean at the moment, there's a lot of energy, extra energy, within the ocean to produce the storms and the showers that we need to generate into eventually tropical storms and hurricanes. So that area is the main reason, I think, why we are having such a active hurricane season again this year. Also, we can't discount what's going on in the tropical or the equatorial Pacific Ocean. So this is the ENSO region, of course. We've got Peru over there. We can't see Indonesia, but it's off the chart over here. Now, 2 or 3 months ago, it looked like we were going to have an El Nino setting up for the second half of this year and going in towards the winter of 2017-2018. El Ninos tend to dampen down hurricane seasons. It's quite unusual to have an active hurricane season when there's an El Nino going on. But a cold event, a La Nina, is kind of like the reverse of that in many ways. So when you've got a cold event and a La Nina going on, you tend to have more active hurricane seasons. And perhaps surprisingly, because 2 or 3 months ago, as I said, it did look as though we would have an El Nino for the second half of this year. Perhaps surprisingly, we have gone more towards a cold event over particularly the past month through the equatorial Pacific Ocean. We aren't at La Nina threshold yet, but quite clearly you can see we have got cold and average sea surface temperature normally stretched out across the equatorial Pacific. So we are certainly on the colder side of ENSO neutral, probably not all that far away from La Nina type condition. And as I say, this is one of the things that does tend to go with more active hurricane season. So if we had that El Nino that we had, that we was expecting 2 or 3 months ago, I suspect that we wouldn't be having such an active hurricane season. But because the El Nino has kind of failed and gone more towards the colder side of ENSO neutral, possibly even heading into weak La Nina territory, that is helping us get this more active hurricane season. But I think the main reason is what's going on in the tropical Atlantic in terms of those significantly warmer than average sea surface temperatures right in the area where the showers and storms begin their life, their genesis, and then they develop, they progress into the storms and hurricanes that we get further down the line. So let's see what's going on the very latest in terms of the National Hurricane Centre. Looks like this. 3 areas of interest still. This was the case yesterday. So we've got this orange X just here. And again, we've got an orange X over here. So those are not yet tropical storms, but they are areas of interest. And yesterday, the risk that these might develop into storms was sort of under 40%. Now the risk is 40 to 60%. There's a risk, 60% risk that these might develop into a storm. Not necessarily guaranteed that they will, but they might do. So this area, I don't think it's going to do all that much off the coast of Mexico. But this one over here in the Atlantic, that one's more interesting. I think there is, because it's in that area that we're just looking at with those warm sea surface temperature anomalies, I think there is a good chance this will develop into our next storm, possibly hurricane. This is likely to be storm or Hurricane Jose. That's the next one that's going to be following Irma. And that probably happens in a few days' time. But the main area of interest, of course, is this area just here. This is Hurricane Irma. It's now up to Category 4 hurricane. It may get to Category 5, which is as high as we can go. And it is now bearing down, you can see very closely on the sort of eastern Caribbean islands. It's just beginning to head into the start of the eastern Caribbean. So the forecast track for Hurricane Irma is to move through the Caribbean and then head up towards the southeastern part of the United States of America. So this is the forecast track from the National Hurricane Centre. You can find a link to the National Hurricane Centre on the links page, by the way. This is where Irma is right now. It's just there. And you can see that by tomorrow, yes, we're beginning to move Irma into those eastern Caribbean islands. By the time we get through to the end of tomorrow, it's heading into Puerto Rico, probably giving them a real blast of severe weather. And then it carries on eastwards, so by the time you get through to Friday, for example, it's somewhere between the Dominican Republic and Haiti and the Bahamas, and also probably affecting British Virgin Islands as well. So those areas in for a pasting at the end of the week. And then into the weekend, we're heading it into Cuba. This being Cuba, of course, just here. These are all holiday destinations, so you know, even if it's off to these islands, they do need to be in contact with their tour operators and checking the forecast and flights very regularly for the end of the week and into the weekend. So by Saturday, Hurricane Irma is into Cuba, giving them, again, a real pasting. And then by the time you get through to Sunday, this is the position, the forecast position from the National Hurricane Centre of Irma as well, is to the south of Florida. And at this point, the models are wanting to curve this northwards and move it up into Florida the second half of the weekend and early next week. By this point, it could well be a Category 5 hurricane. It's certainly likely to be Category 4, maybe Category 5, which means sustained gust of wind of up to 160 miles an hour. Very, very serious weather indeed. This is a website, tropicaltidbits.com, and this is showing me tropical Atlantic Ocean with the GFS model. So this is for right now, where Hurricane Irma is right now, that area of low pressure just there. Let's see what the very latest GFS run wants to do with Hurricane Irma. Actually, we're at the midnight run, so let's just go through to the 6 o'clock run, because that's the very, very latest. So we can see what Irma wants to do, what GFS wants to do with Irma, which I'll say is in that position just there right now, just heading into the eastern part of the Caribbean. So we're going to run through, and we can see that in the coming few days, this is taking us up to tomorrow, Wednesday, the Hurricane Irma is starting to head in towards the Caribbean islands. It carries on moving eastwards, so at this point it's affecting places like Puerto Rico, heading into Dominican Republic, Haiti, just there as well by the end of Thursday, really bearing down on those areas. And then it carries on eastwards, so by the time we get through to Friday, it's sort of to the very far north of Cuba, between Cuba and the Bahamas, essentially. Keep in mind that this is Florida, of course, just here. But Friday into Saturday, it's somewhere between Cuba and the Bahamas, giving a real pasting to those areas. If the storm carries on pushing eastwards, and as we're heading towards the end of Saturday and on to Sunday, then we get the curve. There comes the curve northwards. Notice the central pressure by this point is being indicated to be incredibly low, 898 millibars. That really is very, very low pressure. So again, the curve northwards from Cuba up to Florida on Sunday, pushing northwards. And yes, again, we've got another GFS run showing a direct hit for Florida from Sunday into Monday next week. That looks very, very severe for Florida. And then the storm carries on pushing northwards, so by the end of Monday it's moving out of Florida and heading up into this Carolina, South and North Carolina, and then it pushes northwards into some eastern parts of America inland, and it's a tropical storm at this point, still packing a real punch, and of course losing very rapidly its energy and its identity. Carries on heading northwards, you'll notice, in towards Canada by the time we get through to the middle of next week, and then it properly starts losing its identity. Notice behind it we've got this storm just here. That is, by this point, Hurricane Jose. At the moment, I won't go any further than this. We've gone to Thursday next week, Thursday 14th of September, which is 222 hours away. I'm not going to go any further than that because we're very much into the unreliable time frame now. But at that point, Hurricane Jose is being kept in the Atlantic away from populated areas. So that one, not worth being too concerned about at this stage. But of course, that's a very long way off, and we'd have to wait and see exactly where the models take Hurricane Jose in the end. So that's GFS. This is the ECMWF. Again, this is the latest position of Hurricane Irma just there. Let's continue to move through. Remember, this going 24-hourly steps. So we've gone to Friday when we are moving Hurricane Irma very much into the Caribbean islands. It pushed into Cuba Saturday, and then by Sunday, it is giving a direct hit to Cuba, actually, whereas the GFS has it slightly off the north coast of Cuba. But we're talking about fractions, really, of the difference here in terms of the global weather system. That's the position of Hurricane Irma by midnight on Sunday. By midnight on Monday, yes, we're getting the curve northwards. We're pushing Hurricane Irma into Florida again, and again we have a direct hit, a direct impact on Florida from anytime from Sunday into the early part of next week, a real pasting for Florida. Then the storm pushes up into the Carolinas. Let's go through into the middle part of next week, where it very, very rapidly starts to weaken and lose its identity. As far as we go, which is day 10, we have the Hurricane Irma sort of dying in the States of America. And there is Hurricane Jose safely out to sea in the tropical Atlantic, but obviously threatening and needing to keep an eye on what it's doing. Just show you the Canadian model. It's a little bit different with the track of Hurricane Irma. So this is the Canadian model. Again, position of Hurricane Irma right now. Going to run you through so you can see where Canadian model takes Irma initiates through the Caribbean, bringing very devastating weather to large parts of the Caribbean. That's Irma's position by the end of Saturday. Notice it's pushing it into the Gulf of Mexico, which is just here. So the curve northwards, it is going to curve it northwards, but it's going to do it further west than the GFS and the ECM are doing it. So actually it curves it northwards so that it's off the western coast of Florida by 6 o'clock in the morning on Monday next week. Not giving quite such a direct hit to Florida, but what it's going to do, instead of hitting Florida, it's actually going to move it into some of these Gulf coastal areas of the United States. Again, not so much Texas this time, but certainly I think that is giving a direct hit to somewhere like New Orleans, which really wouldn't be very good at all for them. Memories of Hurricane Katrina, of course, are very much in people's minds with this active hurricane season. So Florida doesn't get hit as bad with the Canadian model, but there again is New Orleans lost, because that is giving a direct hit to New Orleans. I think we go with the ECMWF and the GFS, however. The Canadian model isn't quite as good a model, so it looks like the favoured track of this is still to move it through the Caribbean and then head it up into Florida. Just finish with a close look at this part of America with the GFS model from westcentral.de. So this again is the position of Hurricane Irma on Saturday, when it again it's between the Bahamas just here and Cuba just there. We move through into let's just see if we can move through into Sunday. Then it's pushing northwards into Florida. And by the time we go through to Monday, yes, it's giving a direct hit to Florida, a real pacing going on then, pushing northwards by Monday into the Carolinas, South and North Carolina. Then it goes further north as a tropical storm and starts to decline. So it's all very concerning. Initially it is, again, still the Caribbean islands that are in for it between now and Saturday. Going to move through the Caribbean, producing a lot of devastating weather there. Then we've got the curve northwards. It looks like that curve northwards is going to happen from Cuba, push up to Florida in the second half of the coming weekend, possibly as a Category 5 hurricane, giving wind gusts of up to 160 miles an hour. And we can't discount the possibility that curve northwards might happen a little bit further west into the eastern portion of the Gulf of Mexico. If that happens, then places like New Orleans will be coming into the focus for this storm. But it looks like the two best models, the GFS and the ECMWF, want to curve this north into Florida. So that's what we're still going with at the moment. The authorities in Florida are taking this very, very seriously. They've already declared a state of emergency. So going to have to watch what happens over the coming few days. We'll keep you updated, of course, at Gav's Weather Vids. Right, so that's it for what's happening in the tropics. We're going to have a look later on at the weather close to home for the next week to 10 days. We'll have a look at CFSV2 for UK and Europe for the next month. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.